Going to look at who I think is the best team in college basketball. They've been number one in Ken Palm basically all season. That's the Houston Cougars, coming off a bad loss last weekend against Memphis. Sasser, the number one player, or one of their best players, is out. There's concern there of how much he's going to play if he plays, but it won't matter tonight. And I always like backing good teams in a focused spot, and that is Houston. I also like the under in this game, though, because these are two slow half-court teams. Everybody knows Houston plays extremely slow half-court basketball, but so does Northern Kentucky. And Northern Kentucky is a 16 seed for a reason. They're one of the worst teams to get in the tournament. They really were lucky not to be in the play-in game that we saw the last couple of nights with those 16 teams. And talk about slow. Northern Kentucky, 358th tempo out of 363 teams this year. That's even slower than Houston, who's only 345. So the under makes sense here as well. So you start going, well, Steve, you like Houston, you lean under. What's the best way to play this? Well, let's not overthink it. Let's just play Northern Kentucky team total under, because if I like Houston in the under, I think that's the best play in this game. And I'm a little concerned with Sasser's status. They were 13 points weaker offensively per 100 possessions without him. So that's another reason I like the under in this one. But once again, I'm not going to overthink it. I look for Houston to dominate, low-scoring game. Let's take Northern Kentucky under 51 total team points.
So when you're talking about under 51s, all right, basically you're saying you're not getting the free throw line, you're not hitting three-pointers, there's going to be no pace, and you're not going to have any offense. I mean, for me, that's a really low total. I understand how good Houston is defensively. And I understand that there's not going to be any transition buckets in this ball game. But from a value standpoint, can you get there under 51.5? Or is this more in the lean category?
Well, no, it's a lean. I've got 5 strong best bets today, Teddy. I've got my complete bracket. This didn't make the cut, so that's why I'm using it here on the show as an additional game. So it is a lean, but I like Houston. I like the under. So the more I was looking at, the best way to play this is that team total, because it encompasses both of them. You're risking 1 unit instead of 2. And let's keep in mind, this is not a conference opponent for Northern Kentucky. First of all, Houston held all opponents this year to 56.5 points. All right. So that's only 5 points more than they got to do tonight against one of the weakest teams they've played all season. They weren't in a power conference, but they still played much stronger teams in this. And they held Cincinnati before this to 48 points, 25% shooting. They held East Carolina, the first game of the tournament, to 46, 31% shooting. Memphis got 75 on 51% shooting. The only other really time Houston had a bad defensive outing was against Wichita State at the beginning of the month. Gave up 65% shooting, 66 points. They came right back, and they held Memphis to 36% in that next game. Of course, they didn't play as well against them this past weekend. But once again, before the Memphis loss, they held both East Carolina and Cincinnati to 46 and 48. So very confident they can hold Northern Kentucky to less.